no one really knows my story. No one really knows who I am. And it was kind of an introduction as to who I am. Like, look, this is what I've been through, and this is what my mission is to take the shame out of sharing paranormal encounters. You shouldn't be ashamed. You should be like, no, I saw this. I know I saw it with my own two eyes. You know what I mean? And not be ashamed anymore. We got to stop that.
Paranormal experiencer Marie Stevens could be described as a reluctant author, but her book, The Boogeyman Chronicles, has certainly created plenty of interest. She's penned a collection of her own experiences after strong prompting from people close to her. And although reluctant, she produced this book, and she's joining us to talk about the book and hopefully share some of her experiences with us today. Hi, Marie.
Hi, how are you?
Great to have you with us. The Boogeyman Chronicles, why did you decide to write the book in the end?
A lot of different reasons. Of course, I'm a very private person. I don't really put myself out there a lot, but my every once in a while I would kind of share a story here and there, like, oh, I've had paranormal encounters too. And I would, put a few things out there, and people were like, well, what else? And they wanted to know more of the story. And I was always really reluctant to share that because, I was scared. We grow up being ashamed of sharing our paranormal experiences. I then a few years ago started to listen to paranormal podcasts, and I realized there's a lot of people that have paranormal encounters. It's either that one person that had that one UFO encounter, or it's like me who have had a lifetime. Or they lived in a house and, for a few years they were, tormented by something. But there's a lot of people, and I wanted to make it so that I wanted to take the shame out of, because every time I heard someone on the podcast, they would be like, well, I haven't told this story. And it kind of sounded like me. And I'm like, gosh, we got to stop this. We got to stop being scared of paranormal encounters because of sharing our paranormal encounters, because it's just part of life. There's a lot out there. And so I started my own podcast to kind of be a safe space for people who want to share their paranormal encounters. And you can be anonymous if you want. You don't have to show your face. You don't have to show your name or anything, but just, it's almost like therapy. Talking it out makes you feel a little better, gives you a little closure or something, or a little bit more peace. And so I wanted that for people. I wanted that. I wanted that for myself. I wanted that for other people. So I created my podcast. And then as I was having guests on, I realized I was kind of jumping in going, oh yeah, I've been through that. And I realized no one really knows my story. No one really knows who I am. And it was kind of an introduction as to who I am. Like, look, this is what I've been through, and this is what my mission is to take the shame out of sharing paranormal encounters. You shouldn't be ashamed. You should be like, no, I saw this. I know I saw it with my own two eyes. You know what I mean? And not be ashamed anymore. We got to stop that.
And I spoke with, when I interviewed Erin Montgomery, who produced a book called Dirty Little Secrets, and her mission when writing the book and talking about her experiences, that she wanted to normalize paranormal experiences. And you talk about how many people have had, a paranormal experience of one kind or the other. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of people. I would go as far as to say it's almost got to the stage where it is normal because so many people are having them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where it started really to make people who are having paranormal encounters, make them feel wrong in some way or bad or crazy. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it was was it, based in religion. People were now saying, oh no, there's no such thing as ghosts because they're the devil or something. You know what I mean? Like, what happened? Or is it, was it because of Roswell? The government was like, okay, let's make people think they're seeing paranormal stuff, especially UFOs. Let's tell them that they're crazy. Let's tell them that they saw things. Let's make people doubt their own eyes. It maybe was a combination of a lot of things, but I also want to normalize paranormal encounters and again, tell people you're not crazy. You know what you saw, you know what you experienced, especially when it's reoccurring like mine was. Just like you said, there's millions of people, like from the one person that's had that one encounter to, all the people that have had several or a lifetime like me. And it never stops,
Right.
we have to take the giggle factor out of it. We got to take the shame out of it. It's just, I know what I saw. So when I recount my stories to people who may not be a believer, I say it in a very matter of fact way. I don't apologize. I don't go, well, you might think I'm crazy. I don't say that. I just say, yeah, I had this happen.
Yeah.
There you go. Believe it or not.
Yeah. I had a light bulb moment not long ago, and it takes me a little while. I'm a bit slow at times to pick things up. But when I first started covering this, it was just mainly UFOs, and then it kind of worked into the alien side. And then I found it fascinating. I just wanted to talk to experiences. But lately it's been near-death experiences and pre-death experiences, but it mainly the NDEers. And I'm fascinated that every time they leave their body, they talk about communicating through telepathy. They can talk that way. And I thought, well, why wouldn't they? Because we are spirit. And even when ET comes down and talks to people, it's not vocally, it's through the mind. So why wouldn't people be experiencing paranormal experiences when, as I said, basically we are spirit, and that's who they're connecting with?
Exactly. Yeah. I believe my theory, like I said, we're always going to be trying to figure out the paranormal from generations on. You know what I mean? People, back the Celtic people, our ancestors, my indigenous ancestors, we're all trying to figure out what is this? What is this? What is this spirit? What is this ghost? What is this alien? What is it? What is it? And my theory is that we live, people, I liken it to like Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past. He brings them to all these homes, and nobody can see him, but he can see everybody. And that's how I kind of, when I do medium work, that's kind of how it is for me. I mean, I've had spirits come up to me and go, oh, hey, you can see me, awesome, great. So anyways, and then they just start talking to me. They want to be seen. And so I think the veil is pretty thin. I'm trying to put it into the right words. Like, I believe that we are walking around and there's stuff going on all around us, but we can't see it because our eyes aren't trained. They say that cats can see ghosts, because they have that kind of vision. Well, we don't have that kind of vision, and so I think really that from my experience and being a medium, being so sensitive to everything, there's stuff going on all around us, but we just aren't, either taught, or maybe whatever reason we're not, our little lizard brain isn't, able to see those things, maybe we, but I really believe though that, like, when we say we had a gut feeling, I believe that there's a kernel of that sensitivity in all of us. So whether or not you're a medium like me, or you just kind of get that little tinkle of a feeling, you're not too sure about something, something creeps you out, I think there's a kernel of sensitivity, or I don't want to say psychic, but you know what I mean? Like intuitiveness, or, you know what I mean? There's something, I think primal that's been in us for ages. You know what I mean? I think it went back to the Neanderthals. Like it's just something that's in us.
Yeah. And, you've only got to look at a baby up until, maybe a year old or perhaps a bit older. And you're often there staring at them and they're looking straight past you, and suddenly they'll smile and they'll giggle and they'll laugh, but they're not looking at you, they're looking at whatever's behind you. So I still think they've got a connection to the other side, in their first year or so of life.
Absolutely. I mean, you see these kids that, say the most terrifying things, if you're not really prepared for it. And they're talking about grandma who passed away 20 years ago. You know what I mean? They grandmas come in and talk to him. Grandpa too, grandpa came in and see me. Well, grandpa's been dead for, 10 years. So how, you know what I mean? How would he know about grandpa, or, whoever? So I firmly believe that. I don't know why, but I firmly believe that kids up until what they say, the age of 5 or so, have that ability to see things. And I definitely think that was probably one of my cases as well, you know.
Yeah. So when did it all start for you?
Very young. I was I was still a baby. My mom remembers me talking to something. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
She would hear me. She put her ear to my door, and she would hear me talking, like just like actually like talking to, she didn't hear another voice, but she heard me like very directly, like asking questions and stuff like that. So that kind of creeped her out. She was just kind of like, when I heard you do that, I was just like, okay, I don't want to know what's going on in there. But she would open the door. Nobody would be there. Of course, she couldn't see anything. But the first really scary encounter that I had was, it's my dog in the back. Sorry. My first scary encounter was I was old enough to stand up in the crib, and I remember I was standing up in the crib, but I remember I saw something floating. So I was pointing at it, you know, I was upset by it. I was pointing at it, but yet I remember, I have a very distinct memory of being the thing that was floating, looking down, and I could see everything. I could see me standing in the crib. I could see my whole room. I could see the diaper pail, you know, the nappy pail. I could see everything. And I knew the wallpaper and everything. And I, you know, would tell my mom about this. And she was like, how did you know what that looked like? You were just a baby. And I'm like, I saw it. And then about a year or so later, same thing happened. It was Easter. I was in my little Easter dress on my little purple tricycle, you know, and I remember my mom and sibling, they were desperately trying to get me to like hide eggs and look for them. And I think I needed a nap. I was just like not having it. But I remember just being terrified by something, because I remember, you know, being the little kid looking down or looking up and looking at something. And I still remember looking down and seeing everything, everybody. And I don't know what that was. I asked Paul Eno, who is a paranormal investigator, well known in the States at least, but he worked with the Warrens. And I asked him, I said, Paul, what was that? And he said, I don't know. I've never really heard much of anything like that. He said, maybe, and he kind of took a stab and he said, maybe in the multiverse you were, you know, you had a shifting identity point and you just kind of split and, you know, had that moment. I don't know. I don't know what that was. I still to this day don't know what that was. So if you have any idea, please let me know.
No, I was thinking, it sounded a bit like an out of body experience, but you were still aware in your crib as well as being up there.
Yeah. I wasn't dead. I wasn't sleeping. It was an astral projector. I mean, who knows? Maybe we can do those things and we don't know we can. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't tell this very often, but I was just over 5 and going to my first day at school, and I was walking, my mum walked me down the side of the house with my little brother, and we got out onto the pavement, and then she walked about 10 yards in front of me, and I just stood there, and all of a sudden everything just slowed down, and I was like in my own little bubble, and the strong, I just had this strong sense, and my mum, I heard my mum kind of like a distant voice, although she was only 10 yards away, say, come on, Dean, come on. And I said, do I have to do this again? Another 12 years of school? And I still remember her face. She was absolutely shocked, because in Australia, you do 7 years of elementary and 5 years of high school. And that was my first day of school. And then as soon as I said that, everything just dissipated and we went back to normal. I couldn't explain that.
I've had several encounters like that when I was a kid. I would be playing with my Barbies. You know, I'd be kind of like in kid mode, I guess, just playing with my Barbies. And all of a sudden I would stop and I'd be like, why am I a kid? Why am I in this body? I would look in the mirror as a little kid and be like, this isn't me. Why am I a kid? I would get like really angry. I was a kid. I was like, wait a minute. I was an adult just not too long ago. Why am I in a kid's body?
Yeah.
So I don't understand, you know, really a lot about reincarnation in the traditional sense, but yet at the same time, I'm just kind of like, I had these weird encounters as a kid. I had very distinct memories of like being in the 40s and 20s and all that stuff. So it's really, I don't know. I had the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book is fascinating, and I've isolated about 5 of the chapters here, and I just was hoping you'd kind of look at each one on their own. And the first one that caught my attention was Grandma's Place. What was that about?
So I had a grandmother who and grandfather that lived in Miami. So we used to drive down and go visit them. And from very early on, something was there that did not like me, very malicious. And I remember it pulling my hair. I remember pushing me. I remember something rushing up to me. I would be in the hallway by myself and I would feel like it's like someone, when someone runs up to you, you could feel like a gush of air.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, someone's standing there. You're just like, what? It was kind of like that. I remember it would terrify me. I would, they would all be like in the kitchen and I would be in the hallway closet getting into trouble. And I remember something rushing up to me like a linebacker, and I'm a little kid, and something's
Mm-hmm.
rushing up to me, and I freaked out and I just ran. And the scariest encounter that I had there was I was about 9 years old, and my dad was moving on with another woman, so it was stepmom number 2, wife number 3, and I'm laying there, and I'm, my stepmom, my second stepmom, my first stepmom, she actually sent me to go stay with her mom and dad in Miami, because I was just so emotional about the divorce. Mm-hmm. So she was like, okay, just go there, because she needed some space. I needed space. So she sent me there. I remember one night, and there was plenty of light in the room. Could see everything perfectly, but this was one of the really bad rooms, one of the guest room. And I remember I woke up, my grandma's sleeping next to me, and she's sleeping like a truck driver, snoring away, Mm-hmm. She don't know nothing's going on. And I remember I'm laying there and I wake up out of a sound sleep, don't know why. And I sit up on my elbows and I'm just kind of looking around like, why am I awake? And then all of a sudden I just kind of lay back down, hoping to go back to sleep. And within seconds of this, every inch of me was plastered to the bed. Could not move. Wow. All the air was being sucked out of my lungs and I couldn't breathe. And it felt very malicious in nature. It wasn't like I was having some sort of seizure. It was just like something was coming in, mm-hmm. trying to get me. And I remember just, laying there, not able to breathe. And I remember kind of looking up going, what is doing this? And I kind of saw, not with my eyes, but I kind of saw like a Voldemort type creature, right. At the end of the bed, like something was intent on killing me. Whatever this thing was that always picked on me, it was going to kill me this time. And I didn't really know much. I wasn't a Christian. I didn't really know much about God or anything like that, but I did cry out in my own desperation. And as soon as I did, it all lifted and I could breathe again. So yeah, it was terrifying.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What about the roommate?
My roommate, a good friend of mine, I'm still talking to him. We still talk to each other, but yeah, that was a really strange encounter. Something I'd never heard before, never seen before, never been through before. But I was probably about 16, 17, and I was, it was only 2 bedrooms, so I slept in the room with my mom. And I remember our roommate slept in the guest room. And I remember we had Advil in a cabinet. And he always had headaches, neck aches and headaches. So he would eat Advil like candy. And so he would always come in. He'd be like, hey guys, he'd come in and just get some Advil and then leave. Well, one night in the middle of the night, it was like 4 something maybe. And again, plenty of light coming in from the security light. And all of a sudden I hear this rummaging and I look over and I see my roommate, our roommate, rummaging through the cabinet, and he's being extra noisy, which was really strange. Like whatever it was wanted me to wake up, wanted me to see it. So I remember I wake up and again, I sit on my elbows and I look and I say, and I call his name. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm not kidding you. This entity, doppelganger, I don't know what it was, literally turned and looked at me. I could see, and he had a beard and mustache, and he was dark haired. And I could see everything perfectly, see his face, see his eyes. He literally looked at me and then vanished into thin air.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't know what to do, so I just was like, okay. And I just laid down and I think I woke my mom up, and she kind of barked at me, like, go back to sleep. And I remember the next morning I told her, I said, Mom, I said, I saw our roommate come in and then it vanished. And she just said, don't tell him because you'll freak him out. Well, later on I told him and he did freak out. He was like, what do you mean? And I said, yeah, I saw something that looked like you, but it wasn't you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was scary.
Yeah, it sounded like a doppelganger, very scary. Have you heard of a place called the Stardust Ranch?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they tell similar stories there of doppelgangers being, one of the biggest paranormal events there, and they really do send a chill up your spine. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Whatever this entity was or is, whatever that is able to replicate a person, even sound like them at times. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah. John Edmonds there was one story where he was having lunch with his wife, or so he thought. For an hour they sat together and spoke and ate, and then she got up and went to the bathroom, and then he got a call on his phone, and it was his wife, and she said, why didn't you pick me up? He said, what? He said, you've been sitting with me for an hour. What do you mean I didn't pick you up? And it was a doppelganger experience, and so that's just crazy. What about a chapter called The Greys, which most of our audience will probably identify with?
Well, this particular story was my mom's story. I included some of my mom's stories and my dad's stories. And so my mom, in the late 60s, she was probably about mid 20s at that point. She had just married my dad, and she already had 2 kids from another marriage. So anyway, one night in San Diego, California, one night, probably I think it was about 1968 or so, she wakes up and she's in a craft with a very tall gray showing her around. Now, my mom was about 5'6", so this gray was way taller than her. She said it was a good probably 6 foot. This gray, excuse me, she got an impression that the gray was female, which I know we don't assign genders to these things, but she got a strong impression that it was female. She also got a strong impression that it was in charge of everything, because I guess she saw grays in her periphery and they were smaller and kind of, I guess, maybe lower ranking. But she said this gray was wearing a shimmery blue tunic. And she remembered it like it was, it took a lot to get my mom to talk about this dream that she had, because it really scared her. And I remember I would, come on, tell me about that. Cause it was kind of that scary ghost story where you wanted to hear it, but yet it was scary. Yeah. So and she would shake when my mom would tell the story. She would literally shake. She was that scared. And I've never seen my mom scared. My mom was scared of nothing, but she was scared of this dream encounter. And she said this gray had a shimmery blue tunic. It looked like a bathrobe, and it was crossed over, had a belt, and had like bell sleeves on. And she said there was some sort of insignia or something, how like when generals have the bars, it had something like that. And she said the gray was showing her around, and she said everything was very smooth, brushed metal. There was no knobs, levers, buttons, switches, nothing was sticking out. And she said this gray put something, it was probably like the size of a coaster, it was the size of, she put it in her hand. But it was this circular thing that looked very much like the seal of the United States. And if you look on an American dollar bill, you'll see the eagle with the shield and the arrows and the olive branch. Yep. It kind of had something similar on that. And my mom remembers, she'd go, oh, we have something like that at home. And then the dream turned, and then she's walking into a elevator with this gray, and this gray, they go up in this lift, and all of a sudden she said it, just like Star Trek, the doors went so the doors open like that. They walk out into this dimly lit room, and it had seats and everything like that, but there was this I guess a control panel of sorts. And my mom says she up to this point my mom was all dreamy and kind of awestruck, and she was like, well, look at that, she was all like happy. And then she said, and my mom said, with its long, skinny fingers, you know, it went like this across the control panel, and the whole entire room and ship lit up and powered up.
Wow.
It powered its own ship, and it lit up. The room lit up, came, you know, the ship powered up. No buttons, no nothing. It just went like this, and everything was just powered right up. And my mom said, she said, when I saw that, I was fine until I saw that. She said, but when I saw that, that was when I realized this thing could kill me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop it. When I saw this, you know, and then everything came to, you know, she said this thing could kill me if it wanted to, and I couldn't stop it. And then that's when my mother, in the, you know, next to the grave, she saw this and she just came unglued. She woke up from her stupor, you know, and she woke up, she was like, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. And then, and the grave telepathically reassured her, telling her, you're okay. We're not here to hurt you. You're fine. You're not in any danger. Don't worry. You know, you're okay. Don't worry. And my mom was at this point inconsolable because she had seen enough, you know, she saw this and that was it. So she panicked. She freaked out. She then, I guess, passed out. Something happened. They maybe knocked her out. I don't know. But she remembers waking up, sitting up in her bed, and she kind of came to, and then she went, oh my gosh. And then she remembered the dream. So she ran to the window that was above her and my dad's bed. And she went to the window and parted the curtains and looked out because she thought that there was going to be a crack out there. She was so sure of it.
Yeah. So she's convinced that was a real experience?
You know, I had to try to convince her because she would not really admit it. She kept calling it a nightmare. She said, I had a dream. I had a nightmare. She said it was, you know, everything. And I said, but Mom, I don't think that was a dream. And she would say, don't say that. Don't say that. So, but this was a full 10 or more years before Close Encounters, before Whitley Strieber's Communion, before anyone really knew what a gray was or looked like. And it was a full, I guess, year or so before even Star Trek. So she didn't even know. So when she saw Star Trek and she saw the doors go, psh, you know, she was kind of like, what? And then she saw Close Encounters. And as soon as she saw those aliens come out of the craft, she was like, that's what I saw. That's what I saw. And I remember being in a bookstore when we had bookstores before Amazon. I remember being in a bookstore in a mall. And I remember we were standing there talking about something and her eyes were fixed on a book. And I was looking at her. I was like, what are you looking at? And I looked at the book. And it was Whitley Strieber's Communion with the gray and the eyes and everything. And she froze. And again,
she recognized it.
Yeah, it overtook my mom. And I looked at her and I said, are you okay? She goes, no, and she just kind of had a little bit of a panic attack. And I had to push her out of the store and get her away from it. And I said, what is with that picture? And because it didn't bother. I mean, I don't like it. It was scary. It's scary to anybody, but she had something personal with it. And I said, what is with you in that book, that picture? And she was just like, that's what I saw in that dream. She said, I had a dream about these things and that's what I saw. And she just shook all over.
Wow. Okay. And did she ever have that encounter again? Did they ever visit her again?
She never recounted anything. I think maybe it just scared her too bad. And if she did, she didn't remember it. But she never really had any encounters. And I've had one UFO encounter, and that was it for me. So far.
Was that just a sighting, or was it an actual contact experience?
It was a sighting. And it was not, you know, my mother, compared to my encounter, my mother's encounter was like Teddy Bear's Picnic. It was like super sweet and fun. And mine was not like that. Mine was really terrifying. It was about 1995. I was about 18 or so. And I remember I was about to go to this. My mom at this point was a Christian and our roommate was a Christian. They wanted to go to this home church and I was tired of it. I didn't want to go there because I was sick of the whole thing and I didn't like the people, you know, they were hypocrites and I was just like, oh God, I don't want to go in there. So I told my mom, I said, I'm staying out here. I'm not going in there. She said, okay, fine. You're, you know, don't worry about it. She said, but if anything happens, you know, this isn't the best neighborhood. So if anything happens, come in, don't stay out here. So I was like, yeah, got it, whatever. So then I'm outside and the home church is behind me, you know, the apartment complex, whatever. And it's behind me and I'm actually standing in front of this pond. And if you're in the South, as you are, and you know when those toads start croaking,
Yep.
it's deafening. That's all you hear is, you know, and there's thousands of them. So that's all you hear. So it's deafening. So I was hearing toads. I was probably hearing other little critters. You know, I was hearing, you know, street noise. I was hearing neighborhood noise. I was hearing a lot. So it was very, very noisy. So I remember standing there at this pond going, and this is happening within half seconds, but I'm going to draw it out a bit just to explain it. So I remember standing at this pond, realizing I'm going to be here for 4 hours because this was a very long church meeting. And I remember looking up at the sky and noticing there was no moon, there was no stars, no clouds. And in this part of the South, we had clouds, you know, at night we had clouds. There's always clouds, no clouds, no nothing. And the sky looked very inky black. It was a funny, like a felt look. It was very fuzzy looking. And I was like, what's with the sky, you know? And I remember I kept getting waves of terror, fear, terror, run, you're in danger, panic. Oh my God, you know, and I had panic attacks at this time. So I thought, okay, I'm just having anxiety. I'm working myself up. I'm getting anxious over nothing. Okay, calm down. So I would calm down, but then all of a sudden this rush of fear. So I was just like, oh my God, what is that? And it felt literally like someone was stalking me. So I'm looking all around, you know, trying to see past these bright lights, and I'm trying to look, and no one's, you know, there's no one there. But then all of a sudden I noticed there's no sound. All the sound on the planet has been muted. I hear absolutely nothing. It's deafening quiet, you know. So I remember weird sky, rush of fear, looking around, and then all of a sudden there's no sound. Where did sound go? And I remember looking up again, and I remember seeing a thin strip of clouds that wasn't there a half second ago. And I'm like, where did that come from? And I remember it was, you know, real thin strip. And I remember I saw 3 lights that were doing this very intricate formation. And I remember I looked at the lights for a second, and I remember my mom used to always say, because we didn't live in Los Angeles where there was the Oscars and all that stuff. So I immediately thought it was spotlights, you know, those big spotlights that go up from the ground, and they hit the clouds and you can see them moving. And I thought it was that. So I dismissed it, because my mom always said, whenever she saw something like that, she would always say, oh, a car dealership's having a sale. So when I saw that, I went, oh, car dealership's having a sale, whatever, you know, and I couldn't be bothered because this weird feeling kept coming over me, and there's no sound now. What the heck, you know? So I'm like, oh, car dealership's having a sale. And I turned my head to look to see if anyone, because I felt another rush of fear. And I remember I went like this, and something telepathically said, look at the lights again. And I went, I looked at the lights, and I gave them a real good look. And sure enough, there was no beams going up. They weren't hitting the clouds. They were inside the clouds. And they were still doing this and they were very bright. And of course, I'm debunking in my head, okay, not an airplane, not a helicopter. There was no drones like we have today. So I'm looking at this going, what the F am I looking at? You know, and I just see it, and it's silent, no noise, doing this very intricate, and it's not running into each other. It's not perfectly in this like intricate figure 8 pattern of sorts. And I remember as soon as my brain, whatever was here was connected to my brain, and we were connected in some way telepathically, because as soon as I went, hey, wait a minute, you know, as soon as I knew something wasn't right, it went, you know, it stopped. The lights, the 3 lights went from like this intricate pattern, and it stopped, and then they just started following each other in a perfect circle. Like it was like, oh, she sees us, yay, you know. It wanted to be seen.
And how often do we hear people say that?
Exactly. It wanted to be seen. It was so strange. It was like, I liken it to like a bully on a playground, where they kind of walk in, and they see the little, you know, maybe the kid that everyone picks on, and they, you know, or the guy that walks into a bar and kind of is looking for a fight. It kind of had that energy to it. It was like confrontational. And this thing went, you know, like this, and then it just went in a circle and just kind of stayed there. Like it was like, yeah, you see us, we're not supposed to be here. And I kept hearing this, we're not supposed to be here, and we know you know it.
Wow. Yeah.
And I went, what the, you know, and I got really I'm a feisty Southern girl. So I got real mad at this. I'm like, you don't come to my planet, pick on me. I don't know who you think you are. So, again, being raised in the, you know, the Christian-y fundamentalist church, anytime you want to make something bad go away, you say, in the name of Jesus, you know, get out of here. And so that's all I knew to do. So I said, in the name, I said, you're not supposed to be here, because it is very clearly plain, like it was violating some sort of rule. It knew it wasn't supposed to be here. It was like sneaking or something. And it said, we're not supposed to be here. We know you know it. And I went, oh, don't you dare do that to me. You know, and I got mad, and I said, in the name of Jesus, you get out of here right now. And I screamed at this thing. And the angrier I got, very interesting. It was connected to me in some way, because the angrier that I got, the quicker the light sped up. So the more I was like, what? You know, it was like, you know, and it started going really, really fast. And then as I screamed at this thing and kind of, you know, called it out and told it to go away, it went and flew off out of the clouds, and it did no sound again. And it moved so fast that if I had blinked, I would have missed it. Thank God my eyes were peeled, you know, it was just like this.
Right.
And I saw this thing fly away. And of course I ran into the home church where my mom was. And I guess I looked white as a sheet or something. But I ran in there, and I was just trying to get away from people, because I didn't want them to know what I had just seen, because I knew better. And so I ran to like a corner where there was like a staircase, and, you know, and I just kind of hugged my knees, because I was so freaked out. I was like, what did I just see? And my mother saw me, and she came around the corner. She was like, what's wrong with you? What happened? And I said, Mom, I saw something. And she said, okay. And she kind of looked over her shoulder at everybody, like, make sure like they didn't hear. And she said, don't say anything. We'll talk about it when we get home. I said, okay, cool. Got it. So we went home. Thankfully, we only lived 5 minutes away, you know. So we went home, and I told her everything. And because of her own encounter, she was like, okay, I believe you. And our roommate was very much into, you know, those sorts of things. And he believed in UFOs. So he was like, wow, okay, yeah. But I didn't tell anyone, because my mom said, look, we hang around a lot of fundamentalist people that don't quite understand this. So she was like, don't tell them. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell them. It's none of their business. And they're going to say you brought the devil. And, you know what I mean? Just weird stuff. So just don't say anything. So I said, cool, I got it. So anyways, the next weekend, I mean, they had another meeting. And so I show up. I'm not about to stay outside. I know better now. So I go, and I'm sitting on the end of this very long couch, and I'm sulking. I don't want to be there. I hate this place, but I'm not going to go outside. What if they come back, you know? So anyway, in walks the parents of my very recent ex-boyfriend. We only dated briefly, but it didn't end well. Anyway, they didn't really care for me. I didn't care for them. We were just kind of not talking to each other. But these people were super, they were like super Christians. They were very fundamentalist. They were very religious. They never let anything but the Bible in their house. They wouldn't let newspapers, magazines. I remember I showed up one day to their house when I was dating their son, and I had a t-shirt with a dream catcher on it. Wow. And they made me take off the dream catcher was of the devil. They made me take off the shirt, and they burned it while they were praying and reading scripture. So these people were kind of out there. So anyway, these people did not believe in UFOs. Everything like that was of the devil. They didn't get into stuff like that. So that next meeting, they walk in, and they're clinging to each other like a couple of scared monkeys. They're just like, and they looked absolutely terrified, traumatized, zombified. I mean, they just did not look right. And everyone was like, we were all talking like, what is up with them? And everyone's watching them. Sure. And they did the whole meeting. They just clung to each other. Finally, by the end of the meeting, it was so scary and apparent that everyone at the meeting was like, okay, like kind of daring people to go talk to them. So someone volunteered, someone went in, says, okay, I'll get to the bottom of this. So they went up to him, and, you know, at the end of this meeting, we get up and, you know, drink coffee and eat cake or cookies or chips or, you know, whatever, just, you know, conversing. And they didn't get up. They usually got up. They usually talked to people. They were pretty, you know, friendly. They were, you know, especially the husband, he was very boisterous. And so they didn't get up. they were just sitting, they sat right on that couch and they did not move, and they just clung to each other and they just looked zombified. I mean, they were just like in shock, shell shocked. And I remember someone went up to them and said, "Hey, you guys okay? Do you need prayer or something?" And I remember they looked up at this person so pitifully, because everything in their world had just been turned upside down.
Yeah.
You know, they wake up every morning and they say, no, it's only Jesus and the Bible and this and the devil, and that's it. So when something like this happened, they didn't know what to think. And so they looked up at him so pitifully, and it took a long time, but they finally went, "We saw something, we saw something, we saw something, we saw something." And they couldn't stop saying it. They were so traumatized. Finally, they got out of this loop of saying, "We saw something, we saw something." And their story was as follows. They drove home the same night that I had seen the lights. So they're driving home. They had further to go. On their way home, they said something very heavy and metallic landed on the roof of their truck. Now they had a tiny little truck, tiny little pickup truck. Something very like a heavy metal trash can went clang on the top of their truck, the roof. And they said this thing proceeded to lift the front, try to steal their car, basically, with them in it. And this thing, they said that this thing lifted their car, the front end of their car, for about a half mile. And of course, them being the super Christians that they were, of course praying in the name of Jesus, blah, 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 you know, warring and just kind of praying this thing. And they said, finally, this thing finally unlatched. You could feel it and flew away. I don't know. But they said that something tried to pick up their truck. Wow. Yeah.
Probably the same ETs that you encountered.
Probably. I mean, the ones that came at me, I think for me, I mean, they probably got a little bit more than what they bargained for, you know, but I mean, they tried to pick on me and they couldn't pick on me. So they, I guess, went and found someone else to pick on.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was pretty terrifying.
Yeah. Marie, is there a history of paranormal experiences in your family? You know, your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, do they all have these abilities?
I know my middle sibling had an encounter. They saw a shadow person that tried to attack them at night in the hallway. But this was in another place. They also were somewhat sensitive. I remember them telling me that they would pick up on things. So I think they feel things and pick up on things, but I don't really talk to my siblings much. So that was apparent. That was enough for me. When I heard them say that, I was like, okay. I'm not too sure about my grandparents. They died before I met them. My mother did, though. My mother and I are both neurodivergent, or both autistic and have ADHD. And there's a very strong correlation between neurodivergence and ESP. And my mother recalls when she was little, she would stay in an old, because she was born in North Carolina. My people were North and South Carolina, respectively. So she would go down to South Carolina to visit family, and they would stay in this old farmhouse. And she said she would see things and feel things there. So she was seeing things and feeling things even as a kid, you know, herself.
Yeah. Wow. There's a strong consensus now. There's been, you know, studies done that all paranormal events, whether they be UFOs, whether they be ghosts, anything of that nature, are all related. They're all interrelated in some way. Is that something that you believe?
Absolutely. I mean, you just look at the stories of Skinwalker Ranch and, you know, and several other people. I mean, they have, here they have a UFO encounter, and then all of a sudden they start having poltergeist activity in their house. I talked to Kathleen Martin, and I actually recorded an episode for my podcast, but the audio didn't record, so I have to re-record it with her at some point. But she was talking about many encounters that she and her family had with ETs, seeing UFOs and whatnot, and then all of a sudden having poltergeist activity in the house that she was growing up in and married in and stuff like that. She said that, you know, people that have UFO encounters sometimes report it feels like a cat is walking on the bed at night when you're sleeping. And so she's had that encounter. She said, we were seeing, you know, because of her Aunt Betty, they had periodic encounters with ETs or dreams encounters, whatever. And she said her and her husband were sleeping, and then all of a sudden they wake up and they feel like something's walking on the bed, and the cat wasn't in there. And then she talked about a college boyfriend who was staying with her family and her, and she said that he came screaming out of the bedroom, I guess, one night because all the hangers and the closet came flying out at him.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely believe that all of those are connected. I mean, and we're now starting to see, Sasquatch sightings along with UFO type high strangeness. So I do. Like I said, I believe all this stuff is happening in this sort of realm around us that we're not in tune to, because we're just focusing on our day,
Mm-hmm.
And how many times have you heard about people having UFO encounters and only certain people see them? It's right there.
Yeah.
And some people can see them and some people can't. So.
Yep. No, that's, well, I hear that a lot, actually. Just before we close it off, talk a little bit or tell us a bit about the backyard humanoid. What was that about?
Still to this day, I don't know what that thing was. But we lived in a very kind of haunted area of the South. It was very swampy. It was very rural, and there was not much out there, only a few homes. And one night my middle sibling was babysitting me or something like that. And they had their friends over. And all of a sudden in our dimly lit backyard, we saw this figure, and this thing was just stand there and it would not move. And it was very ghostly and kind of gaunt looking. And mm-hmm. we still to this day don't know what it was. And it just kind of vanished.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and you didn't hear of anyone else seeing something similar?
No, it was so rural that we were like one of the few places, like homes on the block. I mean, there was hardly anyone out there, mm-hmm. but we saw this thing, and I remember my sibling and their friends were running back and forth from the bedroom to the kitchen. They were just looking at every angle, and this thing would not move. It just stayed there, and it was clearly humanoid. I mean, we could see it in the light. But yeah, it just vanished. Yeah. So strange.
Now, what about the people that you counsel? You talk about something called paranormal PTSD. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Is that like the same as having been to war and coming back, and your faculties start to get scrambled, and you're not quite right?
There's lots of different kinds of PTSD. I mean, I have PTSD from an abusive childhood. I know people with PTSD from a bad marriage, abusive marriage or relationship. Mm-hmm. And you have combat PTSD. I dated a retired combat vet, and he had combat PTSD. And I believe there is such a thing as paranormal PTSD. I know I've talked to numerous people who had some sort of encounter, and they now have to sleep with the lights on. They like I was talking to Terry Lovelace, as you know, and mm-hmm. He still after all this time sleeps with the light on.
Yep.
And he won't walk out into an empty field. It's just, and too, my mom seeing that picture, and it jogged something, and she became anxious. I believe paranormal PTSD is real. It is a thing, and that goes along with normalizing paranormal encounters, talking about them. And just saying, yeah, I had this thing, attack me when I was a kid in my room, and I sleep with the light on still, and I'm an adult, and you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or I still have to put something in front of the closet because something would come out of the closet, or I still have to sleep with the light or the door open because something would shut the door and shut me inside. So I have to have something in front of the door to make sure the door doesn't shut, stuff like that. That is PTSD. You had an encounter, you now have issues of fear and avoidance from that encounter. That's PTSD. So, just because it's from a paranormal encounter doesn't mean it's any less traumatic.
Yeah. So. I've often thought, thinking back to my school days, there were always kids that seemed always on the outer. You'd invite them into the group, but they didn't really want to get involved. And I thought about, maybe there was something going on at home, but maybe they were having paranormal experiences like you did as a child.
Yeah, it definitely, growing up, having these experiences and not knowing what I was going through really freaked me out and really kind of put me in a state of bewilderment. I walked around thinking, Should I say anything?
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to laugh at me? Is other people having these encounters? Because, on one hand, my mom was in that world. She was a psychic. She was a well-known psychic. She used to work with detectives and attorneys solving cold cases. She was very good. And then on the other hand, I had my dad who did not believe in any of this, and my stepmom who didn't believe in any of this and would constantly tell me that I was imagining things. So, I didn't know what to believe. I didn't know if I should believe, should I believe my own eyes? Should I believe my own encounters? I mean, here I was being tormented, daily, nightly by stuff. And, I just walked around going, are other people going through this? Am I the only one? Am I going crazy? Should I trust my own? So this whole thing about normalizing paranormal encounters and taking the shame out of it is something so close to my heart. It's just something that I've been through, and I know that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're well on the way to normalizing it. I mean, how do you feel about the skeptics? Do you think they're not as loud as they used to be because of the evidence of people actually coming out in droves now and talking about stuff?
Yeah, I do. I think the Tic Tac video. This is the thing. There's always going to be skeptics, and that's fine. That's I'm a skeptic too. I always call myself a skeptical believer because I am a skeptic to a certain point, but yet I can't not be a non-believer because I've seen too much. I've been through too much. But I think there's always going to be those people that no matter what you show them, they're never going to believe it because it really shakes their reality and it scares them so much. So it's like, okay, fine. You want to live in this little bubble where this stuff doesn't happen. That's cool. I get it. But yet at the same time, I noticed that when the Tic Tac video and other things, when the government comes out and says, yeah, there's weird stuff happening and we can't explain it. Exactly. I noticed a lot of those skeptics that was like, there's no such thing as UFOs went, ooh, okay, maybe there is something to this, So so I noticed that as time goes on and we are starting to talk about like podcasts, great. You know what? Do we need another paranormal podcast? Yes, we do. Let's get as many as we can. TV shows, people getting their stories out. Mm-hmm. Eventually, those kind of skeptics that are maybe on the fence, kind of go, okay, maybe there is something out there. I don't know what, but maybe, you know what I mean? So again, there's always going to be people that just will never admit to it. And then there's people that say there's something to it, but I don't know.
Right. The book is called The Boogeyman Chronicles. So that intrigued me, the title Boogeyman. So that would suggest to me that a lot of your experiences were kind of bordering on the malevolent side.
Yeah, and to Boogeyman, my dad, there was a thing in our house where like my dad would, every time something scary happened or, like say we would hear a knock or something, my dad would be, the boogeyman's coming, so he always made it a thing. So anything scary, and I put Boogeyman because the boogeyman is different to everybody. Some people had grays bothering them. Some people had shadow people bothering them. To me, it all falls under the boogeyman because the boogeyman is something scary that's malicious, in my opinion. Yeah. So I just put the Boogeyman Chronicles because it was just like one thing after another with me.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the book. Is number 2 on the cards?
Yes, I'm actually working on several books. I'm working on a book right now. 2 of them especially. I really want to get Indigenous people's stories of the paranormal because Indigenous people have a different view of the paranormal than a non-native person. So if you are Indigenous and you have a story, and again, paranormal runs the gamut. It's from cryptids, UFOs to, grandma coming and sitting on your bed at night and, she's been dead for 20 years, but she's telling you to get your life right. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. The paranormal is a big world. So if you're Indigenous and you have stories that you would like to share and be featured in the book, even anonymously, that's fine. Contact me. Also, I'm writing another book about the correlation between neurodivergence and ESP. So if you are neurodivergent or know someone who is, and you have stories definitely get in contact with me, because I would love to speak with you about it.
Yeah, you're talking about Indigenous Americans?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say a great place to look to would be the Indigenous Australians, the Aboriginals. Amazing sixth sense in that culture, and the stories that they tell will just have you glued.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of their stories, and the first book I want to be, North America, North and South America, Central America, Mexico, and Canada, and then the second book, stories from Turtle Island, I would like to do Indigenous people from Australia, New Zealand, and other places of the world. So there's 2 books in there, but yeah, you're definitely right on that.
Great. Thanks, Marie. The Boogeyman Chronicles available at all good book outlets. Of course, Amazon is probably where most people will pick it up at. But as I said, congratulations once again. Stay in touch, and let's talk again at some stage.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marie. That's Marie Stevens joining us today on the show.